The crystal chandeliers of the Whitmore Estate Ballroom cast a golden haze over 500 of Napa Valley's most powerful people. The air smelled of expensive Bordeaux and old money. But for Clara Bennett, the room had turned freezing cold. She stood center stage, the spotlight blinding her, but not as a guest of honor. She was the entertainment, or rather, the target. "Look at them," the narrator whispers. "They all think they know who she is. Just to help. The dirty secret the Whitmores hired to keep the vines alive." Victoria Whitmore stood at the podium, her silver hair gleaming under the lights. Her voice was calm, polished, and utterly devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria announced, her grip tightening on the microphone, "we have a discrepancy in the export manifest. A discrepancy that nearly cost us our relationship with our Asian distributors. It appears our operations manager, Miss Clara Bennett, orchestrated a diversion of the premium vintage." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Clara's eyes widened. "Mrs. Whitmore, that isn't—" "Silence!" Victoria cut her off, a smile that didn't reach her eyes playing on her lips. "We have the digital trail. We have the dates. You acted alone. You jeopardized a billion-dollar legacy for what? A payout from a competitor? Or simply incompetence?" Clara scanned the room. She saw the disgust on the faces of the investors. She saw the pity on the servers who worked under her. And then she saw Ethan Whitmore, the man she had built this modern empire with, the man who knew her schedule better than his own. He stood near the exit, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the floor. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Under normal circumstances, Victoria continued, "We would handle this internally. But the magnitude of this betrayal requires transparency. Miss Bennett, you are terminated. Security will escort you out. Do not return to the estate." Clara felt the heat of humiliation burning her skin. She was being framed. She was being thrown away. She looked at Ethan one last time, searching for a flicker of the man she trusted. He looked up finally. His face was a mask of apology, but he said nothing. He chose his name. He chose his mother. Security guards in black suits approached her from the wings. The gala attendees parted like the Red Sea, creating a wide path for her walk of shame. Clara lifted her chin. She wouldn't cry here. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. But as she was marched out of the ballroom, past the rows of silent luxury, a thought buried deep in her mind began to surface. It was a memory of a dusty office, a dying vineyard, and a signature she had almost forgotten. The morning sun rose over the Whitmore estate, indifferent to the ruin of Clara's life. The vineyard stretched for miles, rows of perfect vines that Clara had nursed back to health. Clara sat in a cramped motel room a few miles down the highway. Her termination papers were scattered on the cheap duvet. Gross negligence. They read, malfeasance. She had spent 7 years here. She had missed her father's funeral because the harvest was early. She had canceled her engagement because her fiancé didn't understand why she had to be at the estate at 3:00 a.m. during a frost warning. She had given everything to the Whitmores, and they had erased her in 5 minutes. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You made a mistake crossing Victoria. Leave Napa. Don't look back." Clara stared at the screen. She wasn't angry. Not yet. She was hollow. She picked up the box of personal items the security team had unceremoniously dumped at the motel reception. A photo of her parents, a dried flower from the first harvest, and at the bottom, a thick leather-bound binder. It was her Bible, the operational manual she had written during the drought of 18. To understand what happened next, you have to go back 4 years. The Whitmore estate was drowning, not in rain, but in debt. A historic drought had hit Napa. The vines were withering. The banks were threatening to foreclose. Ethan was new to the helm, terrified. Victoria was paralyzed by the thought of failure. Clara had been a junior vintner then, unassuming and quiet. But she had a plan. She proposed a radical restructuring of the irrigation rights and a merger with a smaller, water-rich neighbor. It was a gamble. If it failed, the estate was gone. The negotiations took 3 sleepless weeks. Clara and Ethan worked side by side in the basement office, surrounded by maps and legal documents. They were a team. "We need to secure the license renewal," young Ethan had said, running his hands through his hair. The export license is up for review next month. If the bank sees any instability, they pull it. We lose everything. Then we make them feel safe. Clara had replied. She called in a favor from a corporate attorney, a man who owed her family a debt. He drafted a clause into the emergency restructuring. To reassure the unstable investors, the export license, the lifeblood of the estate, was tied to a specific operational signatory. Clara had thought nothing of it at the time. She was just doing her job. She signed the document. Ethan signed it. The lawyer filed it away with hundreds of others. The estate survived. The drought broke. The Whitmores became billionaires again. And everyone forgot about the boring paperwork. Back in the motel room, Clara flipped through the binder. Her fingers stopped on a yellowed page. Exhibit C, Export License Continuity Clause. Her eyes scanned the text. To ensure operational stability during fiscal distress, the renewal and maintenance of the international export license shall require the counter-signature of the designated operations manager, Clara Bennett, or her legal proxy. In the event of termination or resignation of said manager, a 90-day review suspension is automatically triggered pending board arbitration. Clara's heart began to hammer against her ribs. She read it again. And again. She wasn't just fired. They hadn't just humiliated her. They had triggered a clause that suspended the very license they needed to sell their wine to the world. She pulled out her laptop and logged into the industry database. The Whitmore export license status was public record. She typed in the estate's ID number, status active, but the clause stated that upon her termination, the suspension was pending filing. The Whitmores hadn't filed the paperwork yet. They didn't know. They thought she was just a worker. They thought they could fire her and replace her like a broken part. But in the eyes of the International Trade Commission, she wasn't an employee. She was a partner. Meanwhile, at the Whitmore estate, Victoria was celebrating. She sat on the terrace, sipping a glass of the vintage Clara had saved. "She's gone," Victoria said to Ethan, who sat stiffly across from her. "It's done. The investigation into the sabotage will be buried once we pay off the distributor. But Clara, she was a liability. She knew too much about the margins. She had to go." Ethan swirled his wine, looking troubled. "Mother, are we sure she sabotaged the shipment? The dates. They didn't quite match Clara's schedule." Victoria's eyes hardened. "Ethan, do not tell me you are defending the woman who nearly bankrupted us. The logs were clear. She redirected those trucks. We have the digital evidence. She didn't mention that she had been the one to alter the logs. A small change, a redirect of the IP address, a perfect frame. The international auction is in 3 weeks." Victoria continued, her voice sharp. "We need to present a united front. The broadcast will go to 40 countries. We will announce the new vintage. We will erase Clara's memory from this estate." Ethan nodded slowly. "And what about her replacement? Promote the assistant manager. He's a fool, but he's obedient." Victoria said dismissively, "Prepare the paperwork. We have an empire to run." Clara didn't go to the press. She didn't scream on social media. She knew how the elite worked. They controlled the narrative. If she fought them in the mud, they would win because they were experts in mudslinging. She needed to hit them where they lived a bank account. She made a phone call, not to Ethan, not to the police. She called Henry Marcus, the attorney who had drafted the clause. "Henry," she said, her voice steady. "I've been fired." A long pause on the line. "I saw the news. It's a tragedy, Clara. You built that place. Do you remember the 18 continuity clause?" Another pause. Shorter this time. Sharper. "I do." "It was never revoked?" "Never," Clara said. They didn't know. They never read the fine print after the bailout. Henry let out a low whistle. "Clara, if you were fired without cause and if that termination triggers the review suspension, you can lock their exports for 6 months. They can't ship a single bottle overseas. It's a death sentence for a brand that size." "I don't want to kill the brand," Clara said, looking out the motel window at the rolling hills of Napa. "I want my name cleared, and I want them to see exactly who they fired." "We need to file an injunction," Henry said. "We serve them during their biggest moment. It's the only way to force a public arbitration." "The international auction," Clara said. It's in 3 weeks. Perfect, Henry replied. Let's get to work. There are moments in life when the truth feels heavy enough to crush you, but if you hold it right, it becomes a weapon. If you believe justice is worth waiting for, hit that like button. Let's see this through. The 2 weeks leading up to the auction were a blur of silence from Clara and frantic activity at the estate. The Whitmores were preparing for the broadcast of the decade. They had rented the largest ballroom in San Francisco. They had invited critics from Paris, Tokyo, and New York. Clara spent her time in Henry's office, going over the financials. They found the digital trail Victoria had tried to bury. The IP addresses used to divert the shipment originated not from the operations office, but from Victoria's private residence. It was a smoking gun, but they didn't release it. They held it. Patience, Henry advised. If we release it now, they spin it. We wait for the stage. Clara felt a strange calm. The humiliation at the gala had stripped away her fear. She had nothing left to lose, and that made her dangerous. She received a text from Ethan. Clara, please, can we talk? Mother went too far, but we need to move on. I can offer you a severance package. She stared at the message. He still didn't get it. He thought this was about money. He thought he could buy her silence and her dignity. She didn't reply. The night of the international auction arrived. The ballroom was dazzling. Flowers imported from Holland. A live orchestra. Cameras from global news networks. Victoria stood at the center of it all, wearing a gown that cost more than Clara's childhood home. Ethan stood beside her, looking handsome but tense. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria spoke into the headset, her voice broadcasting to millions. Welcome to the future of Whitmore Wines. Tonight we celebrate not just a vintage, but a legacy of excellence. Clara watched from a monitor in the lobby, flanked by Henry and 2 federal marshals. Is the feed live? Clara asked. Worldwide, Henry said. Let's go. The heavy doors to the ballroom swung open. The music stopped abruptly. The chatter died. Clara Bennett walked in. She wasn't wearing a gala gown. She was wearing a sharp, navy blazer, the uniform of a professional. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a judge. Security moved to intercept her, but the 2 marshals stepped forward, flashing badges. Federal business. Do not interfere. Victoria froze on stage. Her smile faltered. What is the meaning of this? Clara walked right up to the stage. She didn't rush. She climbed the steps and stood next to Victoria, facing the sea of cameras. Mrs. Whitmore, Clara said, her voice amplified by the microphone Victoria had left on. You stood on this stage 2 weeks ago and accused me of sabotage. You fired me. You dragged my name through the mud. This is a private event. Victoria hissed, trying to signal security. Remove her. She is not going anywhere, Henry said, stepping up to the podium and placing a legal folder on the stand. And neither are your shipments. Clara opened the folder. She pulled out the document from 2018. For years ago, this estate was insolvent. I saved it to protect the creditors. I signed a continuity clause. It states that I am the legal signatory for the export license. You fired me without cause. Victoria's face went pale. The reality began to sink in. Because I was terminated, Clara continued, the license is now under a mandatory suspension pending federal arbitration. Effective immediately. She turned to the camera. To our international distributors, do not accept any Whitmore shipments. They are not legally authorized for export. Any purchase is void. A murmur of shock swept the room. Investors pulled out their phones. Stock prices began to tumble on the live tickers in the corner of the room. And one more thing, Clara said, dropping a set of printed emails on the podium. The sabotage you accuse me of, it was done via an IP address traced to your home, Mrs. Whitmore. I have the server logs. You framed me to cover your own mismanagement of the supply chain. The room exploded into chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Flashes blinded the stage. Victoria looked at Ethan, panic finally cracking her icy veneer. Do something. Call legal. Ethan stood frozen. He looked at the emails Clara had dropped. He looked at his mother's terrified face. He looked at Clara composed, undeniable, powerful. He realized then that he had never really known her. He had taken her for granted, assuming her quietness was weakness. Is it true? Ethan whispered to his mother, "Did you frame her?" Victoria didn't answer. She was frantically trying to gather her papers. "Answer me," Ethan's voice rang out. The board members, who had been watching from the VIP section, rushed the stage. The chairman, a man who had always been skeptical of Victoria's dominance, approached. "If this is true," the chairman said, "and the license is suspended, the company is dead in the water. We are breach of contract on every international order." He looked at Clara. "Can you fix this?" Clara looked at the man who had stood by while she was humiliated. She looked at the empire she had built. "I can," Clara said, "but I want work under Victoria Whitmore. And I want work for a board that allows this kind of corruption." Ethan stepped forward, his voice breaking. "Clara, I'm sorry. I was a coward. I should have defended you. I see that now. Your apology is noted." "Ethan," Clara said softly, "but it's not enough. I want my job back. I want the operations manager title. And I want a seat on the board of directors." The room went silent. A former estate manager demanding a board seat was unheard of. Victoria sputtered, "Over my dead body." "Done," the chairman said, looking sharply at Victoria. "Victoria, you are hereby suspended from all executive duties, pending an internal investigation." Ethan stepped down as interim CEO. "Miss Bennett, if you can reinstate the license, you have the seat." It took 3 days to unwind the legal knot. Clara signed the papers. The export license was reinstated. The distributors, reassured by Clara's presence, renewed their contracts. Victoria Whitmore resigned from the board to avoid criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement. She retreated to a property in Europe. A fallen queen in exile. Clara walked through the vineyard a week later. The harvest was coming in. The grapes were perfect, but the air felt different. It was lighter. She reached the top of the hill, where the view of the valley was breathtaking. Ethan was there, waiting. He wasn't in a suit. He was wearing work clothes, dirt on his hands. "I didn't think you'd still be here," Clara said, stopping a few feet away. "The board assigned me to field duty," Ethan said with a sad smile. "They said I needed to relearn the business from the ground up. They said I spent too much time looking at spreadsheets and not enough time looking at the vines." He looked at her. "Clara, I know I can't undo the silence. I know you don't trust me, but I want you to know you saved this place. Again, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to save it alone." Clara looked at him. The arrogance was gone. The pressure of the family name was gone. He was just a man in a vineyard, humbled by the truth. "I don't need a savior, Ethan," Clara said, turning back to the rows of vines. "I need a partner who respects me." "I can be that," Ethan said quietly, "if you'll let me." Clara didn't answer. She simply turned and began walking down the row, checking the leaves. Ethan watched her for a moment, then grabbed a pair of shears and followed her at a respectful distance. Starting on the next row, they worked in silence, the sun setting behind them, casting long, golden shadows over the empire she now owned. Thank you for watching. If this story reminded you that dignity is worth fighting for, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Until next time, keep your head up